perhaps this film isn't about what we usually think it is. When we first watch Alien, usually as teenagers or young adults, it seems like the perfect story about fear, about a monster hiding somewhere in the dark, about survival, about how fragile a human being can be in the face of something stronger and more dangerous. But time passes, we grow up, we lose things, we face disappointments, we encounter things we could never have prepared for. And if you rewatch the film years later, you start to notice something strange. The alien itself slowly fades into the background. It's still scary, still dangerous, but now it feels like the film is talking about something else entirely, about something much closer to home for all of us. At first glance, it's a story about humanity confronting the unknown. But perhaps, deep down, it's a story about our need to believe that we are in control of our own lives. Alien is usually called the gold standard of cosmic horror, and rightfully so. But let's forget about the monster for a minute. Let's look at the first 20 minutes of the film, before the distress signal, before the derelict ship, before the facehugger. What do we see? We see people at work, tired people. They argue about their pay, they complain about management, they smoke, drink coffee, and think about when they'll finally get to go home. The Nostromo doesn't look like a ship of heroic explorers. It looks more like a regular workplace, a giant space truck. That's exactly why the crew feels so real. They don't think of themselves as characters in a horror movie. They believe they're just doing another routine run and that everything is under control. They have protocols, contracts, bosses, and clear rules of the game. And really, do we live any differently? We too build our own little Nostromos. We plan for the future, buy insurance, save money, and make plans years in advance. We want to believe that if we do everything right, life will do the same for us. That bad things only happen to other people, somewhere else. But what happens when something we never planned for enters our lives? Something that cannot be stopped with experience, money, or common sense. Take Parker and Brett. At first glance, they're just mechanics constantly arguing about money and bonuses.
Before we dock, I think we ought to discuss the bonus situation.
But if you listen closely, it becomes clear that it's not just about the money. They care about something else. They care about the world being fair. They do their job and expect a fair reward in return. In their worldview, things are pretty simple. If I hold up my end of the deal, the world should hold up its end. And there's something deeply human about that. Most of us have probably thought the exact same way at least once. If I try hard, if I do the right thing, if I play by the rules, then I will be fine. But this is the exact certainty the film slowly begins to destroy. When the alien is already on the ship, Parker and Brett still try to solve the problem using familiar methods. Catch it, corner it, fix it, organize it. They keep acting as if they are still inside a familiar world. But the problem is, some things don't play by the rules. Sickness doesn't care about your work experience. Disaster doesn't care how honest of a person you were. Blind chance doesn't read contracts. Perhaps that's why Brett's scene still leaves such a strong impression today. Not just because of the monster itself, but because it reminds us of an uncomfortable truth. Life isn't always fair, and sometimes the hardest hits are taken by those who least deserve them. Everyone probably knows the question, why did this happen to me? And maybe this is the exact question where growing up begins, the moment we realize the world has no obligation to meet our expectations. But while Parker and Brett try to shield themselves from chaos with routine work, the other crew members have their own ways of coping with the unknown. Look at Captain Dallas. At first glance, he seems like a man who has the situation under control. He's the captain, he makes the decisions, he's the one everyone turns to when things go wrong.
Standard procedure is to do what the hell they tell you to do.
But as the story progresses, the feeling that Dallas has no idea what to do grows stronger, and the scariest part is, he starts to realize it himself. When it becomes clear that the usual methods no longer work, Dallas does what many of us do. He tries to be even more proactive. He makes plans, organizes search parties, and goes down into the ventilation shafts with a flamethrower, because action creates the illusion of control, even when control is actually gone. There is one small moment that perfectly captures Dallas's internal state. He sits alone in the escape shuttle and puts on some music. Nothing happens. No dramatic confessions, no backbreaking monologues. Just a tired man sitting in the quiet, listening to familiar tunes as if he's trying to bring back a sense of normalcy, if only for a moment. To remind himself that the world still makes sense, that there is still order. Later, he goes to Mother, the ship's main computer. He asks questions, looks for answers, and tries to figure out what to do next, but he gets a cold response: insufficient data. Most of us have probably experienced something similar at least once in our lives, when you turn for help to the systems you're used to trusting, to your bosses, to experts, to authorities, and suddenly you realize that they don't have the answers either, that nobody knows the right thing to do, that there are no adults in the room who have a manual for every situation, and that is far more terrifying than any monster. Ash reacts to what is happening entirely differently. He is probably one of the most unsettling characters in the film because he's hard to understand. Everyone around him is feeling fear, panic, and despair, but Ash observes, studies, and admires. He calls the alien the perfect organism. He admires its structural perfection, its ability to survive, and its freedom from pity and doubt. And you can't help but ask, why? Why does this specific character make us so deeply uncomfortable? Maybe it's because Ash reflects a part of ourselves that we don't really like to acknowledge, the part that is tired of feeling, tired of worrying, and tired of being afraid. Sometimes life hurts so much that there's a temptation to give up our own vulnerability, to become colder, more rational, and to stop empathizing, to turn into a person guided only by logic. The problem is that when the pain goes away, so does everything else. The ability to love, to sympathize, to be there for others. That is exactly why Ash feels so alien. Not because he's an android, but because at some point he stopped seeing humans as humans. To him, there is only the objective, only efficiency, only the system. And that is probably why his betrayal hurts so much. Not because he broke the rules, but because he placed the mission above human life.
Our channel is still very young, and your support is the only thing that allows us to continue searching for hidden meanings in beloved films. So if you enjoyed this analysis, please like and subscribe.
And then there's Lambert, and perhaps she turns out to be the most honest person on the entire ship. Many viewers dislike her. She cries, panics, screams, and makes mistakes.
We get the shuttle and just get the hell out of here.
She doesn't look like a hero at all. But if you think about it, would most of us have acted any differently? When your familiar world collapses, courage is rarely the first reaction. More often, it's denial, the desire to wake up and realize that it was all just a bad dream. Lambert wants only one thing: for things to go back to normal, to just fly home, return to her ordinary life, and pretend that none of this ever happened. And there is no weakness in that. There is something deeply human about it. Because when we face real loss, we rarely accept the new reality right away. First, we argue with it, we disbelieve it, we bargain, we hope that things can still be reversed. This wasn't supposed to happen. That is probably one of the most sincere human reactions there is. And that is why Lambert should inspire sympathy, not irritation. She reminds us that fear is not the absence of strength. Fear is the price we have to pay for having something to lose. But among the entire crew, there is one person destined to walk this path to the very end. A person who will have to let go of all illusions and learn to live in a world that no longer promises safety. Ripley. Today, we see her as a symbol of strength, a person who always knows what to do. But if you watch the film closely, it becomes clear at the beginning of the story, Ripley is entirely different. Remember the scene at the airlock. Kane is infected. Dallas demands she open the door, and the others beg to be led onto the ship. And Ripley refuses.
If we let it in, the ship could be infected.
She isn't cruel, and she isn't heartless. She's simply following the rules. There is a quarantine procedure, and if it is broken, the entire crew will be at risk. In that moment, Ripley genuinely believes that protocols are designed to protect people, that if you do the right thing, disaster can be avoided. But the door opens, and it's not Ripley who opens it. Ash breaks protocol. The system fails. And this is exactly where Ripley's true story begins. because throughout the film, she is forced to gradually let go of everything she believed in. First, the captain dies. Then it becomes clear that the usual methods don't work. And then she discovers the most terrifying truth of all. The corporation knew. The corporation had set its priorities from the very beginning. Secure organism, all other priorities rescinded. Crew expendable. Crew expendable. Perhaps this very phrase is the most terrifying moment in the film. Not the appearance of the alien, not the scenes of violence, but the realization that the system you trusted never intended to save you. In that moment, her last pillar of support crumbles, and Ripley is left one-on-one with reality. No authorities, no guarantees, no promises. And then something amazing happens. Stripped of the illusion of control, she begins to act with true freedom for the first time. She no longer waits for orders, doesn't hope that someone will come and fix everything, doesn't look for the perfect solution. She just does what she can right now. Step by step, decision by decision. That is exactly why the finale of the film feels so tense, because it's no longer a story about defeating a monster. It's the story of a person who accepts the fact that life cannot be fully controlled, and yet she keeps on living.
Ripley activates the self-destruct system and destroys the Nostromo, her home, her workplace, the world that just recently seems safe and predictable. And she ends up in a tiny escape shuttle, all alone. She takes off the heavy spacesuit, takes off her uniform as if shedding all the roles she used to hide behind. Now she is no longer an officer, not a corporate employee, not a part of the system. She is simply a human being, vulnerable, scared, alive. And in this exact moment, she proves to be stronger than ever before. Not because she stopped being afraid, but because she stopped waiting for the fear to disappear. Perhaps that is why Alien continues to resonate decades later, because sooner or later, each of us comes face to face with our own alien. It could be illness, loss, betrayal, or the collapse of our plans. The moment when our familiar world suddenly stops working by the familiar rules, when it turns out that the instruction manual is blank, that nobody knows the right answer, and that the help we counted on might never come. And that is truly terrifying. But maybe Ridley Scott's film isn't just telling us about that. Maybe it's also reminding us of something else. That courage is not the absence of fear. Courage appears when all reasons to feel safe disappear, and yet a person still takes the next step. Not because they are sure of the outcome, but because there is no other way. At the very end of the film, Ripley climbs into the hypersleep pod. Jones curls up next to her, the cat who went through the exact same nightmare alongside her. She closes her eyes, but this is no longer the same sleep that started the story. Back then, the crew slept confident that they were protected by technology, contracts, and the system. Now Ripley knows the truth. She knows how fragile the familiar order of things really is, and how few real guarantees exist in our lives, and yet she chooses to keep going. Perhaps this is the central paradox of the film. It begins as a story about confronting the unknown, but it ends as a story about acceptance, about accepting our own vulnerability, about the willingness to live even when it's impossible to foresee and control everything. And maybe true maturity looks exactly like this. Not like the ability to predict the future, not like the skill to shield yourself from any disaster, but as the willingness to open your eyes to reality as it is, with all its chaos, with all its unfairness, with all its beauty. In space, no one can hear you scream. But maybe this film was never about the scream. Maybe all this time it was about the moment that comes after, when a person is left alone among the ruins of their familiar world, takes a breath, stands up, and keeps on living.